Just a second. And please, someone confirm that you're able to see the slides.
We see
Yes,
it.
yes,
we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So today we will talk about part B1 mostly, and the first part is about the excellence part. So why I am showing you so many different small things, so to say. Already mentioned yesterday that the biggest mistake is focusing only in one part, addressing all the aspects in one part, and leaving behind, for example, impact and implementation. But as I told you yesterday, I will show you now that the competition is getting higher. And why is it important? Taking into account all three parts and all the aspects. As you know, there are only 10 pages in part B1. If you exceed it, so it's cut and only 10 pages are given to the evaluators. So why is it important addressing all the questions in the template? So I have some answers to this. So first of all, I already told you yesterday that the number of applications are increasing. Before 2025, normally it was approximately 10,000 applications per call. Last year it was 17,000. So the number of your competitors is increasing. So this is why it's important to work on the quality of your proposal to higher also your chances in getting funded. Also the funding thresholds. So not only the numbers are increasing, but also the quality of the proposals. This is not official, this is only my opinion, but we see that also generative AI is widely used, and we see also that the quality of proposals is increasing, maybe because of this. And the third thing is that as Latvia is a widening country, those applicants who are applying with a host in Latvia may also check this box for the other fellowships I already explained yesterday, and might receive funding from another budget for their fellowship. And this is another thing, that if you do not get the funding from the Marijas Kirī program, you might get funding from widening. But also for this, you need to be the best out of this pool. And when we talk about the quality of proposals, so I didn't put the bullet here, but ChatGPT was released late 2022. So we see that numbers are increasing. This is only my opinion. This is not official, again, saying this, but we see that the scores for the proposals that are funded are also increasing. So that is why it is very, very important addressing all the aspects, not focusing only on excellence part alone. This is, at least from my experience, one of the biggest mistakes, that people start kind of late, start with, of course, excellence, as this is the first part and it has 50% of the weight on the final score. But when not addressing all the other aspects, you lose points. And so this is why I'm telling you to work on all parts of the proposal. So when we talk about the first part, so it is excellence. It is not only purely about research and the idea itself. As you can see here in this picture, excellence part has 4 different subtopics, so to say, and this covers both the research, so the excellence of your research, the idea. It is also about the training, so what the postdoc will be taught, what training he will have, what quality of training. Then there is a small amount, but anyways, there is a question about the supervision, quality of the supervision, and about fellow itself. So the CV of the fellow is also important and evaluated. So excellence is very important, of course, as it has 50% of the weight on the final score, but still it's not the only aspect. So again, reminding to address all the aspects. One of the easiest ways how to do this is by following B1 template. Template is based on the evaluation criteria, basically 1-to-1, except like deep sub-criteria. It's not written there, but like the general guidance follows the evaluation criteria. So when you read annotated template, so there's this instruction template first, and the second part of the template is like the clear version where you can fill in your information. So, mentioned yesterday, but for those for postdoctoral fellows, I highly encourage you to print out the instructions and highlight those things that are very important for you, or maybe you think you forgot about this thing, or you're not aware of this question. So work with the documents you already have, not to skip something or forget to address something. B1 part is telling you what is needed there. Next thing is to precisely fill in what is requested. Sometimes I see that people misunderstand what is there. So this is a question that you can turn to me and I may explain what is expected there to be filled in. But as we have only 10 pages for the B1, the whole proposal, so excellence, impact, and implementation, the way of talking about your project is going straight forward, quantifying things, if you have workshops foreseen or any other activities, just put the numbers so that there's a clear picture of how much you will do these tasks and what is the quantitative thing here. And being realistic, we had yesterday some examples, what is over ambitious, what is realistic. So being realistic, so what actually you can carry out within these 2 years for the European fellowship or 3 years for the global. And another thing that I sometimes hear from people that, well, evaluators look at what they like most. But no, this is not true. Actually, they do not have a choice. And this is also the way of thinking that they do not have a choice putting higher or lower scores for you, as they have a grid. They need to strictly follow the grid and check the box. Is this question addressed or no? And then they assess qualitatively. So how good is this answered in your proposal? And another thing, yesterday we had an example about open access practices, gender dimension in the proposal context. So if any of these things are not addressed, so it's okay if it's not relevant in your proposal, but you need to mention that you have considered this. And if this is not mentioned, then evaluators think that you forgot to address it, or you don't have idea about what is this aspect. So even if it's not relevant in your proposal, you need to mention it, not in terms not to lose points. So when we talk about excellence, I already told you that this is not only purely about research itself. Of course, it is important, and there are two main evaluation questions about research. So about the quality of your research objectives and the proposed methodology. So this is purely about how you are proposing your research idea and how are you thinking of conducting it. But also you can see here that two other questions are about the training. So the quality of the training that you're proposing, supervision, and the researcher. So the CV and your skills and your ability to conduct this research. And what is scored? So basically this is what the evaluators see. They have the evaluation question and evaluation sub-criteria. And you see that there is no room for subjective opinion. So this is the checkbox for evaluators. And that is why also you need to see if you have addressed all the aspects in your proposal. And when we start with the first sub-criterion under excellence part, so this is about the research objectives. I already told you yesterday how important is using this SMART approach. So this is an approach that requires being very specific. So having each sentence with a meaning. So there is no empty. So it's no empty sentences in your proposal. And this approach helps you to put to prepare your evaluation. To prepare your research objectives in a way that you have answered all the questions. Later on, we will also try to think of these questions individually. But one thing, again, to highlight is that this might not be relevant to all of the applicants, as research topics are different. For some who has preliminary data available, you might have a hypothesis in your proposal. For some people, you may have research objectives for your idea. And also, normally we see that also for the whole fellowship, there's a general goal set that covers both the research itself and also the career perspective. So these two aspects that I mentioned yesterday that are important. So using this approach might help you in putting the right things in your text itself. So I have an example here from funded project. What does it mean to have a text that corresponds to this criteria? So objectives are realistically achievable, measurable, and verifiable. So normally I receive many questions about what does it mean? And here we have actually more than one answer. One approach is like shown here, that the proposer puts everything nicely in one text, where we can really clearly spot all the answers from this smart approach. So how is going to be conducted this research? What is actually going, so what is the subject of the idea? Why is it important to address this topic? Actually, why now? We can see also from this example this is about the fertility policy and maternity policy, I believe. And what is the output? So what is the result that you're going to within this fellowship? As I mentioned, this is only one approach. Also, for some people, it might be useful to put quantitative numbers here if you have something that you can actually measure by numbers. And this is mostly for STEM fields, etc. But when putting your proposal and writing your objectives, so this is basically the description. This might be also used in the abstract, that you can find for each sentence relevant questions from the SMART approach. Another thing here under excellence part is talking about the gap in the knowledge. So finding and describing the state of the art, your project. So I already showed you yesterday these two things that you put. The postdoc may think of this in a way that what I know, what I have currently, what is the problem, challenge, or an obstacle in the research field, and this smaller middle part that covers both these things is the middle part that your proposal idea might come in. So finding the gap in your research topic is also important, as this will be addressed in your proposal. And it also covers the novelty. So why is this novel? Why is this new? Why is this needed in your research field? Yes, and here is also an example from the funded project, how the novelty aspect was addressed. This is, again, one of the approaches. You might also include this in one sentence when you write your abstract or your introduction of your project. But here in this proposal, it was put one by one. So firstly, so it evaluates the impact of novel prenatal cash transfer on fertility, and in brackets, explanation for those who are generalists and non-experts in the field. So as opposite of traditional postnatal policies. Second, it contributes to understanding of abortion-seeking behavior. And again, in brackets, explanation for those who are non-experts, which is rarely done. And this already highlights the novelty. So that this is the topic that is not that much addressed in this field. And thirdly, it evaluates the impact of the earmarked non-means tested transfer on child health at birth. So again, in the brackets, explanation which has not been done previously. So you have three arguments that explains why this topic is important. So just have shown you the first evaluation question about the research objectives. How does a measurable objective looks like? And now I would like to go further to the methodology part. Here again, you have 4 smaller questions that will be covered. But the main thing that I would like to tell you is about when you talk about your methodology and your research objectives. So first tip, so to say, is thinking in a way that when you put down your research objectives, basically this is the backbone of your project. And normally the approach is building the work packages and the work plan based on the research objectives, and then going more in details and putting down the tasks that you will need to carry out. An important things to note is that, first of all, it is very recommended to integrate open science practices as part of your methodology. So basically mentioning that the open science practices that you mention in your proposal are an integral part of your methodology. Second thing, if you will have a secondment, non-academic placement, or any other kind of mobility foreseen in your proposal, then this might also be a part of your methodology. And the most important thing here to address is what is the added value of this kind of mobility. So shortly explaining, so what is the added value, what is other hosts bringing into your training, into your skills development. And the most important thing, I think, for me, as I see that oftenly applicants forgot or skip this part at all, is thinking about what are the methodological challenges in your proposal. As for some, it might be an interdisciplinary approach, so combining different data sets, methods, or approaches. So thinking about challenges is very important, and also explaining how you're going to tackle these problems if you will have some in your proposal. And as I already mentioned, objectives are very important. This is the backbone of your project. So basically, this is what are you going to achieve within the project. So this is the guidance for you and for your project. I will show you this again a bit later when we talk about the implementation. But this is like the suggested approach when you make your work plan. So management and training program. So these are, so to say, not to say mandatory, but highly recommended work packages. As you need to manage your proposal project, you will have deliverables towards the funder, and also some postdocs also put training program or training work package as a separate work package, just to highlight the importance of these issues in the project. Another suggestion is putting maximum 3 work packages that corresponds to the research itself. So maximum 3, not to have an overload, and also to have this work manageable. And another work package to address is about the communication, dissemination, and exploitation. As, for example, the communication activities are foreseen to happen from the first to very last month of your project. Another sub-criterion under excellence is about the interdisciplinary approach in your proposal. So before we think about how to address this, you need to ask a question to yourself, is this relevant in your proposal or not? So first of all, a short definition. So what does it mean, an interdisciplinarity? So this is an integration of whether information, data, techniques, tools, perspectives, concepts, or other kind of things from 2 or more scientific disciplines. I will also show you a real example, so how does it look in reality. But this is what the interdisciplinarity is understood here in Horizon Europe. And then we go further in understanding, so is this relevant in your proposal or not? And if it's not, so if it's purely in one field, then anyways you need to mention, not always points, that you know that there's this interdisciplinary approach, but in your proposal, this is not relevant. Just one sentence explaining this is totally fine. But on the other hand, if you have this approach when you are integrating different, for example, methods in your project. So, this is the example. This is an example from this fertility project that was funded under PF. So combining different fields of science. So in this project, it was political science, demography, gender studies, and medicine. So going to the detailed keywords, this was an example for this specific project. So what are the topics covered in the project? Yes, and if you have this in your project, this is also enough explaining this in 1 or 2 sentences. So naming concretely what are the aspects or research fields that are covered in your project. And that's it. Next is about the gender dimension and other diversity aspects in the research. So first thing to mention is that this is not about the gender balance in the team. This is about the gender dimension in the research content. So the content itself. And again, if it's not relevant in your proposal, 1 sentence explaining that this is not relevant in your research. If it is relevant, then there is actually quite a lot of guidance from different research fields. And I do not want to go into specific example, as actually there are so many examples available online. There are dedicated projects who work with these examples and explaining these things. So I will just leave you with many examples. So there's a training available, document with examples, with detailed case studies and methods used. So please use this. I would like to highlight in this slide the checklist available. This might also be useful for you when you start. So before going into details, just checking so what might be relevant to your research. Another thing is already mentioned, open science practices. And this is very often confused with open access to publications. Mentioned yesterday already that open access to publications is a mandatory thing. So this will be in your contract and you need to provide open access to your publications as this is public money. If you choose doing otherwise, then this will not be from the EU money. But what does it mean, open science practices? Basically, this means sharing your research early and in open way. And here we have many examples. And again, each postdoc needs to think about what is relevant in his or her research. So first is about research output management. So one thing for every single person who is writing postdoctoral fellowship is putting in your proposal, so naming that you will have this data management plan. This is a mandatory thing, and anyways, you need to do it. You will also need to put this in your Gantt chart. But other things to consider is, for example, if you have electronic lab notebooks, this is also one of the tools, how to manage your research outputs, or if you have metadata. So again, mentioning how you're going to manage this. The next thing is measures to enhance reproducibility of your research outputs. So one thing that everyone also should know is that if you have some research outputs that you don't want to share with everyone, this is allowed in Horizon Europe, as there is this main general principle, as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So if you have something that should be closed for now, this is possible, and this concerns your IPR, so intellectual property rights, and this is okay. You might explain that this is your internal policy, or naming something that is in your host institution that is not allowing at the moment to share these results, and this is totally fine. But the principles that are requiring you to share all the rest is called fair principles. And good thing is to mention fair principles, that your work will be, so you will share your outputs according to fair principles. Next thing is providing open access to research outputs. So this means what repositories you will use. And basically this means naming what will you use. And also, for example, you may mention what type of licensing you will use. So this is the most widely used. If your host institution has another approach, talk to them and see, so what is the approach used in your host institution. Normally there are some people who are responsible for this or might tell you. And then the latest two aspects, these are, so if relevant, if you're interested in sharing your publication in open peer review, so also mention it. It's not mandatory, it's optional if you like it. And for some social sciences, there's also this citizen science involved. And if you have something foreseen in your project, so please name which approach you are using. So co-design, co-creation, or co-assessment. Here, under this table, you will have a guidance about all these things, basically, that I mentioned, but in more detail. Again, open science, this is kind of wide area, and there's a lot of guidance, seminars, documents, guides available. Number one guide that I recommend is Horizon Europe Program Guide, which has the most specifically put down requirements under Horizon Europe, so this framework program. And for Latvians, there is a seminar available in Latvian. And in general, if you have any questions about open science and these practices, I recommend using OpenAIR for training, for your knowledge, and getting to know what are here under this topic. Another thing that I wanted to show you is where and how to find the guidance. So I already mentioned that data management plan is a mandatory thing, and everyone will be filling in this by 6th month of your project. But the way how to find where it is in Funding and Tenders portal is quite kind of complicated. So that is why this is the only way. This is the only reason I put this down for you. To see how complicated and where these templates are hidden, actually. This is not hidden, this is available for everyone, but there are so many steps to take to get to the template. And also, if you need other templates or other reference documents, so this is also the way where you can find Horizon Europe templates. Third evaluation question is about the quality of supervision, training, and two-way transfer of knowledge. So here we have again 4 smaller questions. So one thing is that I would like to tell you that the skills that you will be thinking about, so for the postdoc, there are so many different skills. You have this guidance on Eurodoc about transferable skills, but as you can see in this flower, transferable skills is only one part of possible training. So this should be taught from the perspective of a postdoc. And I encourage each postdoc who is considering applying for postdoctoral fellowships, first of all, think about himself or herself. So what do you want to accomplish in your life further on? So Marie Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship is an opportunity for you to reach your goals. And this is why please sit down and think for yourself. So what do you want to achieve? And then by by this, when you have this goal, so what do you want to achieve in 2 years of the fellowship, 5 years later, or even 10 years? So what is your career goal? And then you may also break down it to the skills that you need. So what are you lacking and what skills do you need in terms to get there where you want to go? And this is also important later on when you're going to fill in the training plan. And this is up to postdoc. So you are the one who is deciding what is needed for yourself, for your career. So when it comes to two-way transfer of knowledge, we had, I believe, 5 examples yesterday. So what is good two-way transfer of knowledge and what is not? Here I am only showing what are the tools that might be used for seeing how this knowledge transfer is working. So for the fellow, you will have this career development plan. This is, again, a mandatory thing that every postdoc will have to fill in together with the supervisor. Then second part is the formal training that you will receive within the project. Integration in the host team, mainly done by a supervisor. So supervisor is the one who is helping the postdoc integrate in the team. And of course, the networking. So wider collaboration within the university, maybe within the postdoc's, the supervisor's network, etc. So these are the tools, how the postdoc may gain knowledge. But from the other side, I already mentioned yesterday, you need to think in 2 ways. So what the postdoc will give to the host. So one thing is the expertise. So define for yourself what is the postdoc's expertise that you may give to the hosting institution. What is your knowledge in the field? Maybe you have some specific skills or knowledge or competencies. And also a postdoc, if you had your own networking and collaborations in the past. So this is also what you may bring up from your side for the two-way transfer of knowledge. On the other hand, it is a bit different when we talk about the global fellowship. So for the global fellowship, you will have the outgoing phase in a third country and the returning phase in the Europe or associated country. This means that this is a 3-way transfer of knowledge. So a postdoc is giving to both institutions, and also there's a knowledge transfer between the institutions as the postdoc will be bringing the knowledge further. So this is basically the same approach, but you need to think in the perspective of 3-way transfer of knowledge. Another thing is a non-academic placement. I mentioned already before that this is not a mandatory thing. This should be included in your proposal and in your project only if there is something relevant, if you may think of added value for the training, for your skills development. And also here, when we talk about the knowledge transfer, also here you need to mention why is it important for you to go for a non-academic placement, as this mobility will have extra money for the project and extra time after the end of the fellowship. So what is the added value? Here I have only some suggestions, some directions where you can think of. So career diversification, knowledge transfer, and skills acquisition. So directions to think of if you foresee a non-academic placement. Some examples only. So it might be also about the sustainability of research. So a placement at the environmental NGO to help translate climate data into actionable policy briefs for local governments. So I believe universities do not have this kind of expertise. And in this case, an NGO might help. For digital humanities, of course, there are some things that clearly relates to algorithms and digital skills, what, for example, some museums or tech companies might have. Example for biomedical engineering. So again, there might be some startups or small medium enterprises that might have some expertise that a hosting institution, for example, a university, do not have. So you need to think of the added value and the expertise that the host don't have. And for the social sciences, these might have some think tanks, or for example, some EU governing bodies, another EU bodies, for example, the European Commission, that also has its own its own expertise. And lastly, this is about the researcher itself. So how are you putting down your CV, and is the proposed work corresponding to your skills and knowledge? So this is what is evaluated under fourth question. And here, I already showed you this table yesterday, but just to revise it and repeat it, that in the CV, it's not only about the research that you have done, it is not only about the publications or citations or so on. So again, the suggestion is listing up to 5 publications, so maximum. If we have some postdocs who are publishing more, so please think of main 5 publications. And it is nice to add some qualitative explanation about these publications. So what was your involvement? What was your input here in this for the evaluators to understand your role? And the bad example is just putting down only one side of your skills. So putting down only papers that you have. I highly recommend putting also all the mobility related experience that you had. As Marijas Kirī Postdoctoral Fellowships is a mobility program, so it is important also for evaluators to see, have you been doing something like this before? This is about your initiative and leadership. So what have you done previously? And putting down all this experience, also if it covers your master's degree time or bachelor's. So anyways, this might be relevant also for the evaluators to see basically your personality and your readiness in doing things. Then there are other skills, other experience that you might put in your CV. This is about supervising master's, bachelor, thesis, teaching activities, peer reviewing, or organizing workshops, organizing conferences. This is again about your leadership skills. And so the postdoctoral fellowships call is about a postdoctoral fellow to become a more independent leader in his field. So this might also help evaluators to understand that you might be the right person to get funding, as you already have some initiative and you have done something previously. And of course, again, reminding about career breaks. Please do not leave the blank. If you had some breaks in your career, academic career, this means also if you have worked in the private sector or a governmental body for some time, not in academia. Also, one sentence in explaining this, that I have spent, I don't know, 1-2 years in a company working there. This is also helpful, as leaving career breaks might leave some room for evaluators to worry. And then, of course, mentioning different other aspects like travel grants, fellowships, prizes, awards, anything that might help to understand your personality. And I already mentioned yesterday, so communication is also a very good thing to mention in your CV. So have you ever been involved in these kind of communication activities? So have you participated in open door days, researchers night? Have you participated in any kind of contests, science slams? Have you written a blog, or have you visited schools? So this is about the communication things that will give you a plus if it's added in your CV. The other part, so one thing is your CV and what you put there. So it is maximum 5 pages in part B2. The CV is put in part B2. And another thing is showing the quality and appropriateness of you as a postdoc to carry out the research that you're proposing. And here, again, I would like to invite you thinking in the way that you might also describe why are you the most suitable person for this research. So you might mention some of the experience that you have, and highlighting in this way that you are the right person and you have the skills, readiness, and some experience already to continue with this research. So telling about your professional experience so far and what have led you to this point that you're ready in joining the postdoctoral fellowships, so conducting this project, and explaining why your scientific expertise is unique. So again, thinking about the knowledge transfer and what can you bring to the host institution. Then it might be useful also to add, so show your transferable skills. So leadership, independent thinking. So might you be, if you have organized any conferences, any events, have you joined any mobility before, and so on. And of course, choosing the main achievements of your CV and highlighting, so the experience that the most efficiently corresponds to the Marie Curie call. So what is expected in this call, then highlighting these things that are relevant in your CV. And another thing that might be relevant for some of you, if you're using, for example, the scientific literature in other languages than English and your mother tongue, it is also useful to put the language in the CV, so that they will later see that, okay, you not only know English and your mother tongue, but also you are able to work in another language